It's like the intangible things are often more important than the physical stuff. When you're talking about using money to amplify your character, if you're a good person and you have access to money, you can do amazing things. The same way that if you're a terrible person and you have access to money, you're going to do horrible things. And so that's one of the things that I think I've had to unlearn as a first generation wealth builder and a Latina. There's a lot of demonization of wealth. There's a lot of like the biblical religious undertones that wealth equals gluttony or greed, and that somehow wanting it makes you a bad person. And I'm just like, why are we glorifying the struggle? It's not cute.
And there's so much associated with how people view wealth and like the negative aspect that, to be really honest, I've been able to build wealth to a certain extent on my own. I will never call myself a self-made anything because that's just not the reality. But I was able to reach close fire in my 30s and things like that. A few years before my father passing, he actually told me what his plans were and that I was going to be a successor. So I was already preparing myself, but I thought this is like 10 years down the line. So I have time to do everything that I want to do. And then in the future, figure out how to make this next generation or next step work. Unfortunately, my father passed away during COVID. And so as I was building my businesses, I had to now step in as CEO and figure out how to take this legacy that my parents have built and now add to it and not basically let it, whatever happens to generational wealth, we've heard the statistic, not have that happen to this hard labor of work that my parents have been able to build, and really think about generations beyond my grandkids are going to be able to benefit off of the work that we're going to be putting in today. But I really struggle with being a second generational wealth builder, to be honest. Like a little bit of shame associated with the fact that I didn't start from scratch. And I think it's because of all of the negativity that people associate with wealth. So I had to really have conversations with people, and even the people who started from scratch were like, that's actually what we want our kids to be able to experience. And we should come out and talk about this some more. So I'm glad to be here and talk about it today.
Add to what you're saying, I think there is like this misconception that the Bible wants people to be poor. And so for those who are Christian or who believe in the Bible, it was so interesting. When I started teaching more adults, I started having church congregations reach out and say, like, can you come teach financial literacy to our youth and then the adults? What I did was I actually found a bunch of Bible passages that were showing that he wanted you to be wealthy. And, you know, even in situations where, like, let's say Job, where he took away a lot from you, what he took away, he gave back tenfold. And so that has been like part of, like, I would say my mission, but it's definitely something whenever I go to like a church that I tackle. It's like, I don't really see a lot of places where he says he wants you to be broken poor, a certain level of humility that some of the people in the Bible might have. But a lot of people, when you think about like Abraham and these people, they have abundance. The abundance might just equate different. Like they have 1 million cows. Back then, 1 million cows is basically like saying I'm a billionaire. And so I just think, though, when we are to the point where the money becomes who we are, and we're chasing money and not passion and purpose, that is where I feel like God teaches you a lesson. I feel like that's where the Bible might be like, it's about to go left, right? And then the poverty might come. Because I feel like even in life, it goes like that, just universal law. If you don't believe in the Bible and you just believe in universal law, if you're a taker, take, it's going to get to a point when you're not giving enough that the universe is going to be like, you know what? We're going to start taking from you because all you do all day is take. So I think it's important that we have a balance of give and take in life. And that's also the balance of generational wealth, I feel like, because you build organic relationships that can help you remain in the position of financial wealth, in my opinion. Because we can't do this all by ourselves. It takes a try.
That's why it's called generational wealth, y'all. It's going to take some time.
Right?
So, Jatali, so I know you mentioned that you were a real estate investor. Can you share with us how you get started and how you've been able to become financially independent through real estate?
So I started honestly with wholesaling. Technically speaking, if you really talk about like the origin story, my dad gave me my first property ever. And when he passed away, that was something in Manchester, England, that I remember being a little bit more a part of that process and learning more about real estate. But once again, because it was just something that he did, I didn't understand the importance of it. And I just, for a long time, just kind of was just like, it didn't mean anything to me. And it wasn't until I left corporate and I was in the middle of maternity leave. And I realized that I was working for a company that even after maternity leave to come back and they wanted me to work crazy, obscene hours as if I didn't have a newborn at home. And I remember them questioning my ambition because of it, because I did not want to work crazy hours or lower my pay. And all these conversations started being on the table. I went to one of my cousins who at that time, he had just made his first 10 million in real estate. And I was like, well, I know you're doing good in real estate. Maybe can you let me know, how can I get started deeper? Can you teach me some things? And because he was formerly working for Keller Williams, who I must say, not a plug for them, they have some of the best trainings when it comes to real estate individuals that I've seen. And so my cousin gave me a lot of his books and notes and tape recordings from his classes there. And he was like, well, I need somebody to help me with wholesaling. He's like, because that's where I'm really making the most amount of money. So he started teaching me how to wholesale and teaching me the scripts. And at first it was like, you would be 75 calls in and getting rejected before we get like a warm lead or a hot lead. And because of that, it just the way my brain works, being formerly investment banker and finance, I'm like, our pitch must be wrong. And so I started tweaking the pitch. That's when he actually originally at that point was when he gave me all of his notes from when he was at Keller Williams. And I started looking at all these different books and magazines, and some of them are behind me on my bookshelf. I was able to create a better script, which got us to the point where it was every 25 to 30 calls, we were getting warm leads and a yes. Every 10 warm leads turned into a hot, yes, this is a sale. And so originally that's how I started. From there, I then started doing real estate syndication deals because I already was in the middle of creating Kids Who Bank. And I knew I didn't have the time to physically doing like a flip in certain projects. And because I didn't have that physical hands-on time, that's what made me start doing some syndication deals. And those syndication deals were developers who were like, okay, well, we'll do all the work and do everything. And my cousin, I had the blessing of my cousin ensuring a deal. And because he knew me and he did that for myself and a couple of other people, it gave me a safety net that I wanted and that I needed, because coming from a finance background, if you tell me to just give a stranger $100,000 without it being insured, I'm like, oh my God. And there's an anxiety that came from that concept. But my cousin being like cool enough to say, hey, I'll insure the deal. That means I'm on the line. So if they don't pay you within 3 months, I pay you out of pocket. That became something that gave me the leverage and wiggle room that I needed to start making a $50,000 commission for things that I didn't have to physically work on while building other empires and multitasking in essence and going to school as well. And then eventually it got to the flips. Then it got to like my first development projects in Ghana. And now potentially doing a development project from scratch in the United States and having those kind of conversations, because it gave me the grace to build out the other things that would then give me the financial stability and space that I would want or need in order to then focus and pivot attention to a flip. Because when I tell you, when you start entering the real estate space, everything that can go wrong is going to go wrong. And even like the house that my husband and I bought originally, I remember just being in this space where it was like within the first year, there were all these things that we found that the inspector missed. We were with this full ignorance of not realizing that these inspectors, even in their contract, there's a whole lot of gray area. And that's how all their contracts are written, right? Because they basically have it built in that we're going to probably miss something. And so just realizing that and understanding that, it gave me different perspectives as to why it's important to have residual income coming in. Because when the world hits, sometimes it hits you hard. It comes fast and furious, sometimes in threes. And so when I noticed that and I learned that, it just, for me, I was like, I need to make sure that I always have at least 2 other businesses bringing in income to make sure that I can pivot where I need to pivot to.
You said a lot just now. 2 things that I want to highlight. Mention the fact that your cousin was doing well in real estate and that he gave you basically the material that he used to learn about real estate. And so to me, that of course is the importance of this representation, just having someone who has done it before that makes you think that you can too. And also having the right information changes the situation. And so for you, Davonne, the owner of 3 hotels, I would love to hear your story on how relationships and information made you even do all the things that you've been able to accomplish.
I've always been a worker. Post-college, I think I had like 3 different jobs at once, trying to fix up, the property my grandma left me, right? To fix it up and rent it out. So that was my thing, because I didn't understand credit back then, or business credit. So Ellie, I wish I would have taken your class back then. Girl. I would have been like a whole nother beast. Okay. I did not know anything about it. And so I'm like working all these different jobs. I'm basically self-funding my own projects. Didn't know anything about syndication, didn't know anything about partnerships. I didn't know. Then I had an opportunity to move to Boston, and it was a full-time job, a very well-paying job. So I didn't have to work 3 jobs at once. And I was able to still, fund my real estate projects. That's also where I learned a lot more about hotel ownership. But I'm still trying to think of ways to diversify my income, because I don't believe in just having one income. And so I started getting like little side jobs and stuff because I knew that I wanted to have multiple streams of income coming in.